Hey writers! Are you like me and are super curious how to create an audiobook for your novel as an indie author? Doing this for my fantasy novel On Wings of Ash and Dust is definitely a goal of mine this year, so I'm really excited to have my friend and fellow fantasy author Renee Dugan joining me today to share the specific process she went through to find and work with her audiobook Narrator through ACX, what avenues she took to make it more affordable, distribute her audiobook, promote it, and more as she answers our questions live. Whether you're here live or on the replay, let us know what audiobook questions you have for Renee anytime throughout the stream. And while you guys are typing, hi Renee, I'm so glad you're here. Would you tell my friends a little bit about yourself and of course your books and audiobooks that you have out right now?
Absolutely. So, hi all. I'm Renee Dugan. I am an author and now an audiobook author from the Midwest. And I have been writing fantasy books for most of my life, but just started getting serious about getting them published back in 2019. So I have one standalone novel and an ongoing series right now. Both are fantasy. I have the Chaos Circus, which I published back in 2019, and the Star Chaser Saga, which is 5 books into being published, and the 6th one is coming soon. The Chaos Circus, the audiobook for that has been out now for a bit. And the Star Chaser books are ongoing. The 1st and 2nd one are out on audiobook, and the 3rd one is actually in production right now.
You're so busy. Love it.
So busy.
And you have like family and like, a life, right? So it's like you're doing all of these things with all these other very important things in your life as well.
Yep. Never a dull moment. Raising a child, working a couple of jobs, and trying to keep books coming out is I don't get much room to breathe.
Yeah, right. Well, I wanted to thank you again for being on here with us, taking up some of your time to chat with us and answer questions. I know I'm really going to appreciate it. I know people in the chat box are really going to appreciate it. So I'm going to pull up some of those comments that we have live just to say hi to everybody. I saw Dania, awesome. And please let me know if I'm mispronouncing names here, but Biet, I think. And we have a question that we will definitely get to. And I see Jody and Susan and a few others popping in. Oh, there we go. I can click on Allie's. Hi, Allie. So if you guys at any time, I have a bunch of questions kind of pre-prepped, but if you guys have questions at any time, please just put a Q in the chat box and then your question, just like Yet did. And again, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Please correct me. But I wanted to pull that up. Where did it go? All the buttons, you guys, all the buttons. Here we go. So just like this one here, and then I will be able to easily see that it is a question for Renee, and we can pull it up as we go along. And I'm going to save that question for a bit later, but I'd love to bring it up. And I also see Mevia and Jessica and Janine. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are here. We're just getting started. So let's start with this first question here that I have for Renee. What were the top reasons that you had for writing an audiobook for your novel? What were like your biggest goals when you went into this?
Well, the idea to have an audiobook has been with me for a long time, and it really ultimately boiled down to wanting my stories to be accessible through any possible avenue, because there's so many different readers out there that have so many different needs. I have fellow mom friends who are big time readers, but you might not necessarily get as much time to sit down with like even an ebook when you've got a baby that you're chasing around or a toddler that you're chasing around. So, and then obviously, some people have, visual impairment, or maybe aren't able to sit and read for a long time because of, eye strain, just the different things like that. Everybody's got different needs. And I realized early on that audiobooks meet a whole plethora of needs that just the words on a page can't necessarily do. So that really put it in my heart early on. And I was always asking myself, okay, so what steps would need to be taken in order to meet those needs? Getting them met was a whole nother thing, but
yes. But the goal is there and the heart is there. And it's like you will more likely finish something that you're excited about if you have like that reason, or multiple reasons.
passion for it.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep.
And you know, like, what you're trying to accomplish through it, right?
Hmm.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, question here, because I saw another question that might lead into this in the chat that I'll pull up in a second. But before we get into how you worked with your narrator, because we know that you did you ever consider narrating your own books at all before hiring a professional?
Not since the one time that I had my little cassette recorder and I set it on my desk next to me and I tried reading it out loud and then I played it back and I was like, well, that's not gonna work. So ever since then, I've known that, I have a lot of talents, but narrating professionally is not one of them. I just don't have the right voice, nor do I talk slowly enough to really be inclusive to listeners. At least not for 120K novel worth of talking. So that was very quickly on the back burner, and I decided, no, I should leave this to somebody who really has a talent for this.
Yes, yeah, and that was, like, worth, like, spending the time and the money to, like, find that person, find the right person, and invest in that, which is the bulk of
Yep.
what we're gonna talk about in this interview, you guys. I know Robin just put up a question, what's a cheap way to minimize or eliminate background noise and echoes while recording? And, so for that kind of question, I would love if you guys let me know of any authors that have recorded their own audiobooks, because we could do a whole different kind of interview on
Mhm.
that topic and, like, what the equipment that they use is. But for specifically Renee's experience that we're talking about today, we're going to be covering ACX and hiring a narrator and all that kind of fun stuff. So hopefully you're excited for that. Stay tuned, because the next question is, what creation avenue did you take for your audiobook? And was there a specific reason you went for that?
Yeah, so I use ACX, which is a very popular platform. I'm learning the more people that I talk to who have done audiobooks. It's very intuitive. It's very both author and narrator friendly, has been my experience. And primarily I went with that because my primary narrator, Rachel, who I work with on the Star Chaser saga, she's very familiar with that platform, and so she kind of coached me through that and helped me figure out, how to use that, how to work it behind the scenes. And it's also, I really like ACX because it's similar to how Ingram Spark can be really wonderful for indie authors because it handles a lot of the distribution to like the big name platforms, and it makes it very easy to get your book out there. Similarly, ACX works with Audible, which is, at this point at least, probably the biggest audiobook distributor, at least the one that most people are comfortable with and they know their way around it. So it was really important for me to have um, that availability that ACX offers to get it out on a really well-known platform so it could get into as many people's ears as possible.
Definitely.
And then also ACX is very helpful with offering things like the way that it handles royalties, and there's a royalty share option, which we'll talk about a little bit more as the questions go on, I'm sure. So that's been a big one. A big bonus is that ACX makes it very easy to work with your different budget needs and your different what you can do with royalties and things like that. So that
Yeah,
made
and
it a
we
very
can.
high choice.
Yeah, definitely. And royalties, I would love to talk about. I think there is a question that we're going to plug that into. And then I also was seeing something about, like, inclusive and exclusive. There's, like, options to, like, have it kind of in the, like, top three, like, big audio distributors, and then, like, kind of go wide with it too.
Yeah, and of course there's pros and cons to each of them. When you go wide, I believe there. Trying to remember because it's been a while actually since actually went back and had to start one because I've had these all set up for a little while now. But there's pros and cons to if you do it broad, you may get less royalties, or if you do it narrow, you may get a different cut, and things like that. So it's definitely worth even if you decide to go with ACX, figuring out which path within that works best for the individual author.
Definitely. Love that. So then, as you got into ACX, part of that process was being able to see different authors and or different narrators, audiobook narrators and
Mhm,
options, right? But you had two different experiences, I think, that you might
mhm.
talk about. So in those two different experiences, what kind of drew you to those narrators, and, like, how did you decide which one was, like, best for your book?
So yeah, I definitely had two very different experiences. I was really blessed with my narrator for the Star Chaser saga, Rachel LeBlanc. She actually reached out to me initially before I knew anything about backdoors of ACX or anything like that. She reached out to me and actually, as a fan of the Star Chaser books, offered her services as an audiobook narrator and sent me a sample. And I had wanted to do audiobook for the Star Chaser saga, but especially with them being such big books, I was just a little overwhelmed, didn't know how to start that process. So when she reached out to me and was like, here's the first 15 minutes of your book, I broke down in tears and I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. Like this voice, the way that she brought the narration to life. She has a voice that just fits super well with like an epic high fantasy kind of feeling. And so I from that experience with her started to realize like these are the things that are important to me, like the way somebody delivers the voices, the way they deliver the narration, the way they pronounce places and things, and just all these little details. And so Rachel was really, she was so helpful in opening my eyes to kind of things that I had never even considered might be important when looking for an audiobook narrator. And so after we had gone through and we did Darkwind, I actually went on ACX and they have an option on there to launch a project. You basically claim your book through ACX saying, hey, I'm the author of this book. And then you can begin a process looking for a narrator. So with the Chaos Circus, it's a very, very voicey, kind of first person book where, I knew that I really wanted somebody who could deliver not just the main character's voice through the narration as well as the dialogue, but also I really wanted somebody who could do the accent for Nikolai, who's the love interest in the Chaos Circus. That was like a huge thing for me. And so when I went through ACX and I opened up auditions, and I had one lady submit, and she did an incredible, fantastic job with both Tessa and Nikolai. I was like, sold. That's it. That's the person that I want. So that was how I decided on her, was that she was really able to deliver both that kind of whimsical, unreliable narrator voice for Tessa, and then the suave accent for Nikolai. Those were the really big things for me.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that like you can give them, it doesn't have to be just like the first few pages of your book to like audition with, right? You can do like different sections.
Yeah, you actually, it's really up to you. If you have sort of like a what you might consider to be like a penultimate section where it's like, I have a 5-character cast and everybody has a line of dialogue in this 1-page scene, then you might use that, because then you can hear what that narrator is going to do with each different character.
Yeah. Was there any like back and forth too? Like it sounds like this person was like spot on, so maybe you didn't have to give them any direction, but was there room for like, hey, this was pretty much great, but I forgot to mention that this character has an accent, or I like
Mhm.
meant to tell you like, hey, like could you play this character a little bit more? Do you think that narrators would be willing to like kind of go back and forth a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. In the audition phase, actually, before Cynthia, who was the narrator for the Chaos Circus, before Cynthia submitted, I actually had a couple other people who submitted auditions for the Chaos Circus. And I actually did have some back and forth with them saying, this pronunciation wasn't quite right. This voice wasn't exactly what I was thinking. Could you maybe try a little deeper here, a little lighter there, maybe a little faster paced? And they were all really super cool, very chill about it, very much like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'll resubmit, which was amazing because it's like a 15 minutes of their time right there. But they were very, very willing to work with me on that. So that was a wonderful experience.
Oh, that's so cool. And I'm just going to confirm because Allie's like, wait, I might have missed this earlier. But if you go through ACX, you'll post that you're looking and people will audition, which I think is what we're talking about here. So
Yes.
anything else you wanted to add to that, like kind of audition process that you think would be helpful for people to know or?
I would just say, yeah, confirming your question, Allie, that you can post and that you're looking and people will audition. And then also what I did with Rachel, because we kind of talked sort of offline, behind the scenes in ACX, we already knew that we wanted to work together. ACX does also offer the option to reach out specifically and invite people that you think would be a potential good fit. So you can have an open audition. You can also go ahead and look through a list of narrators in your genre, and they'll usually have like, here's a sample of a book that I've narrated before, and you can listen and be like, oh wow, I really like how this person does XYZ, and you can invite them to also audition. So actually, ACX offers a whole plethora of ways to find the perfect narrator.
That's really cool because, yeah, you don't have to get stuck to just people that saw your request and,
Mhm.
like, kind of just pick there. If you have some other people that you've seen, like on Instagram, or I've been finding a lot on TikTok, a lot of narrators that will like do videos or even live streams of them recording their audiobooks. I'm like, save, save, save. Like,
I'm coming back for you.
yes, exactly. There's a question from Janine that it sounds like you didn't really have to do too much with. I mean, it sounds like I've listened to the first audiobook in the Star Chasers series,
Mhm.
you guys, and it was great. And Rachel, right? Is it Rachel that did the
Yep.
first one? Yeah, so
Mhm.
Rachel did like slightly different voices for each of the characters, which is great. But Janine's question is more like if you have like maybe like multi POV, I'm assuming
Mhm.
Janine maybe means like you want different people to voice the different characters. Is that something that if ACX like allows you to hire multiple people? Is that like a thing?
Well, so at the time when I did TCC, before I started, the bulk of the work on that and found Cynthia, I actually did look into the options on ACX for that, because originally I thought, maybe I could have a male and female, a woman to do Tessa's voice and a man to do Nikolai's voice. And that was not an option that they had available at the time that I did that, which was back in, I believe it was 2021 or 2020. One of those years, they all kind of blur together. So I would say at this point, ACX is probably not the platform to go through if you're looking to have like multiple narrators, for one thing. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other platforms out there that might have that availability. I haven't looked into them, but ACX is just probably at this point not the best place to go for that.
Yeah. And Janine, I will bank this question for any other future things that I learn. And so I can update you if I find out anything or if another author has a workaround for that. But good to know that it isn't like maybe the easiest thing to do for whatever book you are thinking about working on. Also, this is just I think can probably be answered pretty shortly, but what if something happens to your narrator and they can't finish the series? For example, the narrator from Game of Thrones has died. So in that case, I mean, Renee, you can pop in with any other thoughts, but I was just going to say that you would probably have to hire, well, you'd have to hire somebody else in that case. And I don't know, it would be a judgment call probably if you want to just start with somebody totally new from the beginning, or you just explain to readers that, hey, this was out of my hands, this unfortunate circumstance, and now we have a new narrator.
Yep, I would say that that's the perfect solution. There's really not much more you can do with that. If you're asking Jody, I believe that's your name based on your handle there. But if you're asking like, would ACX like do anything to help with the books that you've already done, or if something were to happen to a narrator like halfway through a project, I'm not sure that they would be able to like compensate you if you part ways with your narrator. So unfortunately, it's just something to bear in mind as you're going into it. As you know, if something were to happen, you needed to part with that narrator, but you were on like a royalty share plan with them for the first couple books of your series, you're still going to be in that royalty share relationship with them going forward.
Right, right. Yeah. So I would definitely read the fine print as you go through that. And I will just also, I think, confirm from what we were saying before, Janine, that there is a possibility of going wide with your audiobooks through ACX. It's just like you have to select the correct option, I think.
Mhm.
Cool. Awesome. So moving forward, actually, before we get any much more forward, could you talk a little bit about you chose to do the royalty sharing option, and maybe we talk about it here. But since I'm thinking about it, would you mind sharing a little bit about why you chose the royalty share option and how that was beneficial for you? And maybe it actually folds into this question.
Yeah, so I really ultimately went with a royalty share option because it was the most cost effective thing for me.
Sure.
If you're an author who writes, books that are 50 to 70K, you might have a little bit of an easier time paying just the full fee up front, at which point, the audiobook narrator turns in the book and you get to keep all of the royalties once it's out there in the world. That was not really a possibility for me because I write such gigantic books and such long series with such gigantic books that it was going to be several $1,000s per book. Yeah, I mean, you can see Darkwind is thick, and it's not even the thickest one in the series. So, I did my number crunching, and I was like, I should probably get a royalty share. And I actually really like that option, not just because it was the more affordable option in order to create my audiobooks, but because looking forward into perpetuity, like I want to continue, making this series available, promoting it. It's really the book of my heart, or the series of my heart. And so to be able to continue to see Rachel receive royalties for the work that she did, as she's put so much effort and love into it. So for her to continue to receive royalties for the duration of the life of the internet and however long people can get audiobooks actually meant a lot to me too. So that was a huge part of why I decided to go with the royalty share option.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So as we're talking about your experience with both your narrators, could you give us like a little bit of a overview of like once you hired them, like what did that process kind of look like? What were your responsibilities? What were theirs? Communication, and maybe also like how long did it did it last from like start to finish? How long did it take to finish that first book?
Absolutely. So if I miss any of those sub questions, just ping me because I'm operating on not as much sleep as I probably should be. The process with both Cindy and Rachel has been really fun. With Cindy, it was much more. It's been basically, I submitted everything that ACX requested, which was, giving any pointers on the different voices, any accents, things like that, giving the manuscript so that she could obviously read through it and narrate from it. And then ACX has you review a 15-minute little sampling that your chosen narrator will give you. You set a deadline for that and they submit it. And then you have to listen through the files that they submit, check for any, uh, errors, just any hiccups, anything that you might want to change, and then it goes live from there. So Cindy and I, we very much, or Cynthia and I, I'm sorry, we really followed that step by step, basically through ACX. With Rachel, we've had a lot more behind the scenes, and we were always emailing each other and kind of staying up on how things are going. Sometimes she'll send me additional little snippets, or she'll email me and be like, how in the world do you pronounce this name? And I'll be like, I have no idea. I just wrote it. Take your best guess at it, which actually happened with narrating the third book. So even I don't know how that's going to come out. But I will say that Rachel really set the ground for me to have high expectations for how amazing it would be to work with audiobook narrators, because she's been just so prompt and so forthcoming, and has just been a real delight to work with. So it's with her, we follow the ACX timeline as well as doing additional bits along the way. And then I enjoy the heck out of it. I'm not always the most I'm not the best with listening to audiobooks all the time. For myself, it's not always my favorite preferred medium, but I love hearing Rachel bring those worlds to life. So I find it super, super enjoyable. And I know I skipped one of the questions you asked, Brittany. Can you hit it back to me?
Sure. I think it was, if you can remember, from the time you started, and you could talk about both or either experience, but from the time you guys started working together, how long did it take to actually finish and like get it out in the world?
So I would say, just because of the length of my novels, it usually takes Rachel probably a couple months, depending on what else she's got on her plate, to get a Star Chaser novel done. And then it can take me a considerably longer amount of time to listen through it, because I am chasing my baby around. So, I have to basically fit in listening to a chapter here and there, wherever I can. But generally, I found with both, it was usually within a couple months, really, that we would have they would have a completed one to me. And then it would maybe be another month to two months before I would be able to listen through all of it. So as a general rule, I kind of have seen it in my head as being a 6 to 8 month process. If I'm really diligent about listening once I get it back, and if I give myself a little bit of padding to market and hype up the audiobook before I release it. So from start to release, generally 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, and that's super helpful to know because like I think many of us are just like, oh, we'll just give it to them, they'll record it, and then like
Mhm.
it'll go. And so you guys, if you're figuring out like your timelines, you've already got your physical
Mhm.
book published, but you want to start working on the audiobook, like have realistic expectations that it's not just gonna be like, okay, we're done. Um
Exactly. And I will also add, because I had forgotten about this, there's a step now. I didn't have this be a step with Cynthia, but it is a step with Rachel in her process. Rachel actually records the audiobook and then sends it off to somebody that she works with. She has a team that she works with who helps her catch if there are issues on the audio side, any hiccups in her audio, any places with weird echoes in the back, any places where she switches on like pronunciation or anything like that. So that's actually an additional step that some audiobook narrators may have, but others may not. So it was a little faster with Cynthia because she didn't have that added layer of checks and balances.
yeah,
So that's just something to consider too. That it'll depend a little bit on the narrator you're working with.
totally. But otherwise, if they don't, it's like you're kind of the proofreader, right? Like for
Yes,
the audio. Where did you end up like
exactly.
holding, right? Like holding your book and kind of reading along as you listened? Was that how you did it?
So unfortunately, I would have loved to have done it that way, and I think that that is an ideal way to do it. It wasn't something I was able to do because by the time I started this process, I had a baby, and
Right.
so having a book in my hands was not super easy. I am fortunate that I know the Star Chaser books so well, having had to reread them many, 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 many times, that usually I can pick up if there's like a little like, oh, that part isn't exactly how it should be, and then I'll kick that off to Rachel and just say, hey, can we record over this part. But I would say that would be the ideal way to do it. It's just not always possible.
Definitely. Definitely. And I'm wondering too, just like random questions popping into my brain. When you give them the manuscript, it does it have to be in a certain kind of file? Because I know like my final is like in a formatted file, like in vellum. And
Mhm.
so I'm like imagining, would I have to then like copy and paste basically everything that's in there into like a Word document to then send them? Would that be like the best way to go about it?
I've done personally both PDF and Word document. And actually, I had the wrong PDF that I gave to Rachel for her proofer to go over. So I ended up having to then send her the Word document because I knew it was the most up to date and accurate one. So I would say it's again an individual basis. You may have a narrator who much prefers reading PDFs, and may have ones that prefer a Word document because of whatever their personal requirements are. So I would say as long as it's a document they can open, it's probably okay. But it's always good to double check and make sure that your narrator has what they need to be ultimately successful.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm like dialoguing about that for sure. Allie's just saying, oh my stars, Renee, I'm so upset you weren't able to hold your book, listen to your book, and keep your human alive at the same time.
I'm
But
dropping the
Allie
ball here,
knows.
guys. What can I say?
Yeah. Allie can sympathize, right? Because yeah, we're all
I
in this
know,
space
right?
having newborns. This she also had a question that kind of calls back to what we were talking about earlier about royalty share. So I wonder just if you have any other thoughts about this. Would royalty share scare off some narrators? I don't know if you have the answer to that, but I didn't know that was an option. So that's good that Allie, you know that now. But that's a good question. Do you have any thoughts about that, Renee?
Yeah, I will say, I actually had a narrator that I did reach out to and invited them to my open audition for the Chaos Circus. And when they saw it was royalty share, they said, I'm sorry, I only do payment up front. And I was like, that's okay. Amiably parted ways. So there are some who, it's probably not what they're looking for. However, it's really nice because when you open your audition in ACX, it says right there that it's for a royalty share book. So generally, unless somebody thinks that they can like change your mind about it, they're going to see that, okay, this is for a royalty share. That's not really, how I want to run my business. And so they won't audition. So
Right.
generally, I feel like the audition process, as long as it's people who are submitting to you, they will generally, it'll weed out people who don't want to go that route. So that was super helpful. I found through that audition process.
Definitely. And if I just had a follow-up question then, if you start off with a royalty share and then for some reason you don't feel like you're really connecting with any of the narrators and you look back at your budget and you're like, maybe I can make, the payment upfront thing work. Is there a way to kind of switch that project over? Do you kind of like maybe have to start over?
I would have to look into that because I've only done the one audition and it went smashingly, so I
Okay,
didn't
yeah.
have to look into it. But I would think that it's possible to either, because I believe they're timed, like you have it run for like a 2-week audition or something like that. So I would think, if you have not selected a narrator after it closes, or if you need to close it early, you could probably very easily just start a new one under different parameters. Because I'm sure authors, circumstances change all the time. So.
Right, right. Good. Cool, cool. I think you mentioned the answer to this earlier, but how long is the royalty share? It's basically indefinitely, right?
As far as I understand, or at least the way it was set up when I started with Rachel, it's for the life of the audiobook. So as long as your audiobook is out there, as long as audiobooks exist and people are able to have them and Audible's out there, they will continue to receive a portion of the royalties.
Right, right. Which is both good for both of you, I feel like.
Mhm.
Also, I had a thought, Allie, because I did hear one author talking about that there's and Renee, I'm sure you did this too. There's a section in ACX where you can share about yourself and share like your platform. And, so I think one author she's like very, very big. And so she shared like how many YouTube subscribers she had. And like that kind of brought in more people because they knew that they would get like exposure on a certain platform or whatever. So would you suggest like kind of definitely if you have like more like a big newsletter subscriber base or a following on a certain platform to kind of put that in your profile?
Yeah, especially if you're doing royalty share, because I knew for a fact that Rachel was taking a big chance on me because I'm still learning how to market myself and market my books, and I'm getting better over time. But if you're a brand new author starting out and they can see that maybe you don't have as much experience, it may make them a little gun shy. But on the other hand, if you've been putting in the work and you've got a decent amount of followers and things like that, some audiobook narrators may be more likely to be willing to enter into royalty share with you because they know that ultimately they're going to make their money back on that, on
Right.
that investment. So I would say that's really important to do.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you so much too for as I'm like throwing you questions you didn't know you were going to be answering. Thank you for doing that. I'm sure everybody's just like, "Oh, I have this thought and what about this?"
No problem. I love it.
Yay! There's one more little question, then I'm gonna get back to the set that we had before. Is there a way to get physical and audiobook release, kind of like all of that released on the same day? I'm assuming that would be up to the author, right? Like you
Mhm.
kind of timing yourself and like your publishing
Mhm.
process. You probably have to start it at the same time that you're starting the publishing process for your physical book. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I would also say, with ACX, similar to Ingram Spark, you can hit that, go ahead and publish my audiobook button, but it could take a little while for it to be in review. It took Darkwind actually a couple weeks to go through review, and then it ended up taking the Chaos Circus like a few days. So you can do your absolute best. I would always say that if you are planning to do physical and audiobook release on the same day, I would hit the button a good chunk of time in advance. And then if your audiobook gets, it goes through review and is up and live early before your release date, just don't talk about it on social media and then announce them both on the same day. And then it's like, they released on the same day, because other than people stumbling across it, they're not likely to find it. But I would give yourself the padding if you really want them to release, or at least have the release announced on the same day.
Definitely. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of juggling and trying to like figure out like the timing of it.
Yep.
I'm sure it's a lot easier if you like have an agency and traditional publishing and stuff. But
Mhm.
Janine, the other thing I wanted to just had a thought for you is that even if it doesn't come out on the exact same day, even if it comes out like a week later, you then have an organic like reason to talk about your books again, and be like, hey, like a week ago, like the physical book went, live, and now you have the opportunity to get the audiobook, so it could be a not bad thing, if they don't come out on the same day.
A lot of it's just how you spin it, really. So
Definitely love it. So we're kind of moving into this area anyway, but have you found some effective ways to market and promote your audiobooks? Because you can have a product, but then it's like you actually have to tell people that it's there so that they can enjoy it, right?
absolutely. And this is something that I struggle with just as a general rule. Marketing and promoting is still something that I'm doing my best to learn about, and it can be difficult. But I will say that a couple things that I have found that have really helped with getting my audiobook out there was talking about it in my newsletter. I noticed a jump in sales after talking about it in my newsletter, and that's been true for both the first and the second one. Obviously, posting on social media, so just talking about it and not feeling embarrassed about just being like, hey, do you know I have an audiobook? And also, do you know I have an audiobook? And also, designing cool graphics that are really eye grabbing has been really helpful as well. And then this is something that is a little bit more involved and not something that all authors are going to have the same experience with, but I took a course, which Brittany knows about this course actually, on Amazon ads. And because Audible is linked directly to Amazon, the Audible or audiobook version of Darkwind is tied to the page on Amazon. As I took a course and learned more about just advertising it in general and advertising the ebook, people would go to get the ebook and find, oh, there's an audiobook actually, and I actually prefer audiobook. And so that also has helped jump up the sales with audiobooks. So I would say, like, obviously you want to go out on social media, go through your newsletter, go through, whatever platforms you have to market and promote it when it releases, when there are anniversaries, like, hey, my audiobook's been out for 6 months, it's been out for a year, things like that. But then also just driving traffic to your books in general will generally help increase your audiobook sales, as long as things are like cross-posted and linked on Amazon and on your personal website and in your newsletter and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, because if they go looking and they find like multiple formats, then they might be like, oh, I didn't know there was an audiobook. I actually much prefer that.
Exactly.
Cool, cool. With that, I was wondering, I know that I think on Audible and different platforms, they'll have like a sample you can listen to before you purchase it. Is that sample something that you can also share like on social media and stuff? Is that allowed?
As far as I know, yes, it is, as long as it's kind of like out there. I have actually gotten really fortunate too, because Rachel has provided several times just like little snippets of scenes that I've been able to reshare on my social media. So even if you're having a little bit of an issue with, getting links to work, getting that sample to work, to link through on your social media and stuff, you can also go to your narrator and ask them if they have like a little snippet that you can share, because obviously, especially if you're in a royalty share with them, it's in their best interest for these things to go out there and spread out and have more readers come in. So even if you're not able to do it through the conventional platforms where your audiobook is posted, you can usually work something out with your narrator to get just like a little snippet that you can put in there.
Cool. No, that's great. Yeah, especially if you have that like back and forth, with the person already. It's just like, hey, this will really help you. I could tag you if you have a social media, platform, like
Yes.
then we can kind of cross promote. Is there also the ability, because I know like with ebooks and stuff, you can put your books on sale. Is there any control over that for an audiobook, or is that something that like they periodically do themselves, or?
So I have seen, I think at least once the price on Darkwind's audiobook has dropped. I haven't looked super closely at running particular sales. However, one thing that they do offer, which I think is super cool, is they offer, ACX offers promo codes for a free audiobook download. So that's actually, I found that to be really helpful when the Chaos Circus came out, because what I did was I had people sign up for giveaways and things like that. And then that was one of the potential giveaway items that I offered. And so I think that having those, and kind of that can be another marketing and promotion thing, that you get, a couple people to listen to it. And ACX has its own review page, just like, Amazon has its own and Goodreads has its own, and all that. So getting people to listen and offering that as a potential, prize, a free download code, that's another great way to market and promote. And I think ACX knows that, and they are all over that.
All over it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love when they like have those different options. Like I'm in
Mhm.
Kindle Unlimited right now, and they have like countdown deals and different things that you can like kind of take advantage of. So that is
Yes.
super great to know. Thank you. And then we're kind of wrapping up here with a couple ending questions, but I think I kind of know what your answer is going to be. But have you felt like creating an audiobook was worth it in your mind, especially based on the goals that you kind of shared in the beginning?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I've already had several people who have reached out and said, I'm so glad that you offered this in audio, because, for this reason, that reason, I'm not able to sit and read, a print book or a book on, my phone or Kindle. And so being able to sit and listen to it has been a huge blessing. So that alone makes it worth it. But also just, knowing that there's still potential in the future for that to be the case for more and more people, and knowing that it's drawing more people in and they're getting to the story and things like that. I mean, I really can't think of a downside that has come out of doing the audiobook process.
Ah, that's awesome. That makes me feel good because, yeah, I'm like really excited about doing it. So I'm like, tell me
Yep.
that it's your thing, yes. And this kind of ties into that, but is there anything? Because obviously, it sounds like you're very happy with the narrators you chose, the avenue, the ACX, everything. Is there anything that you would have done differently, or if you're going to continue doing audiobooks, that you might like adjust, or you might be like, oh, like I learned this, and I think going forward, I'm going to do this a little differently.
I would say, at this point, I'm super happy with how the process has gone, the avenue I take. And I think, with every subsequent book, you learn, different little things. So, there are things that I wish I had provided to my audiobook narrators, early on, to make the process more streamlined. And, I wish that I had had more energy for promoting and marketing up front, which was just hard to do because I was a new mom. And so it was hard to get the energy to go out and be like, hey, check out my audiobook. So I definitely think, in the future, I would be a little bit more intentional about making the big deal out of having an audiobook that it is.
Mm,
Even if your book came out a while ago, having it on this new platform, this new accessibility, can mean a whole new reader base, and it deserves that kind of attention. So that's something that I would do differently. But other than trying out, different narrators, like maybe trying a male narrated series in the future or something like that, there's nothing that I would change about my experience with Rachel and Cynthia, because they've just been amazing.
mm.
So for how much this fell into my lap and how much of a blessing it's been, I wouldn't change a thing about it.
That's so awesome and encouraging. I'm so thankful that you've had like a really good experience, and like it sounds
Me
like you've got
too.
different things like providing like a pronunciation guide, or different
Yes.
things like that can just make it that much better. But the
Mhm.
fact that you've had like a very seamless, like enjoyable experience is like so good to hear.
Yeah, for how
Um,
unprepared I was, it's gone great.
yeah, right. Well, we appreciate you passing on your wisdom and knowledge and experience. I feel like we've covered basically everything, but is there anything else that you feel like you'd want to pass on to, someone who's thinking about doing this for the first time that maybe we forgot to talk about? And I'm just going to also pull up because you guys this is the last question I have. So if you have any other questions, put them in the chat. We'll answer them quickly at the end. But yeah, and Renee, anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
So I would definitely say the biggest thing, if you're writing like fantasy,
Mm.
is pronunciation guide, pronunciation guide, pronunciation guide. I feel like every fantasy author, we have our own ways that we pronounce things in our world, our character names, things like that. And when it's spoken on audiobook, a lot of readers will take it as gospel. So you want to make sure that you're communicating with your narrator, like, this is how this is pronounced. And just having like a written out, pronunciation guide, it can take a little bit of extra time. This is something that I was so thankful that Rachel actually asked me for this, because I had not even considered that. I was just like, everybody pronounces everything the way I pronounce it. not so. So I would definitely say making sure you've got that up front and it's something you can hand over with the manuscript and just say, here are the things that might be a little tricky to pronounce. And then leaving an open door for them to ask you if, they run into something that they're not really sure about. And then also, letting your narrator know if there's a specific style of voice that you want for a character. If there are a lot of narrators, most of the ones that I've heard to date will, change their voices up at least a little bit for different characters. So obviously, people who are listening can tell which character is speaking if there are no dialogue tags. So that being the case, if you have a preference to how a character sounds, don't be afraid to tell your narrator, like, hey, I would really prefer that character X have, like a little deeper voice, or a higher voice, or speak with an accent, like with Nikolai in the Chaos Circus, because that meant so much to me, having that conversation with Cynthia and making sure that, we understood each other. That was another big deal that really played out well in the long run. So.
Yeah. Awesome. No, that's super, especially for fantasy writers, all the stuff you just said. I'm just like, okay, mental notes. I love it. I do have a question from earlier that I want to make sure we answer, and then I don't see that many after that, so we might just wrap up. But Beata, I'm pretty sure now I'm pronouncing it correctly. Renee, if you have any experience or knowledge about this, are audiobooks popular in all or most genres, or are there certain type of books that do better than others? And it's okay if I wouldn't know this, so let us know if you know.
So I would definitely say that from the research I've done, and take this with a grain of salt because I haven't done a whole lot of research. My research got abrupted with audiobooks before, when I got pregnant and then had my son. So this can change very quickly, is one thing that I've learned, which is why I want to say, definitely do your own research before you take any big steps. But I have found that fantasy and young adult and middle grade ish, like low middle grade, or I should say upper middle grade. So the earlier Harry Potter books, for example, falling into that category, they do super well. And I think a lot of it is because a lot of fantasy books are big, chunky books, and people may not have the time to sit down and read through them, but they have the time to listen to them. And same thing with, young adult and middle grade. A lot of times, parents, if they don't want their kids to have screen time, they're fine with them listening to audiobooks. So those are gaining popularity as more and more parents are kind of adjusting the landscape of screen time for their kiddos. And then also thriller and mystery books seem to do really, really good as audiobooks. I don't know if it's just because it helps build the suspense maybe, but I've heard that those have done really well for audiobook. I haven't heard as much popularity being in the romance genre, like if you're talking like Harlequin romance or really spicy romance. And I think that may just be because a lot of people prefer not to hear somebody else read them, like spicy scenes and things like that. So I would say do your research, but as a general rule, those seem to be the genres and age groups that have thrived the most to date with audiobooks.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I had no idea too about the children's books. Like that makes so much sense that would be like a huge thing. And actually, Allie, teacher, I used to buy the audiobooks of anything I taught in class so the students could read along and listen. So there you go.
Yep.
From the teacher's mouth. We did have a quick question that we answered earlier. So I'll just say for the need to kind of correct your narrator during the recording process. Renee definitely talked about that earlier, so feel free to rewind and watch the replay. And I will add some timestamps probably over the next 24 hours so that you guys can kind of click to the different questions and find your answers a little faster. We've got just people saying, thank you. Yay, you're so welcome. And Janine's just popping in. Yeah, it's almost like reading the kids a bedtime story when you have the audiobooks for kids. I remember the books that I would listen to on tape. I'm showing my age. And and it would say ding, and it would tell you like when to turn the page. I don't know if you had those or
yes. Yep. Oh my gosh, that's a blast from the past. But yeah, that was kind of my first experience with audiobooks, was the read along CDs and books that my parents would get for me.
Yeah, so fun. Oh my gosh. You're so welcome, Dania. I am just going to wrap us up by saying a collective thank you to Renee so much for spending almost an hour with us out of her time that she could be writing or spending time with family. She was excited to spend time with us and share her expertise.
Absolutely.
I love it. And if you could, I know that you shared it in the beginning, but if you could share one more time where we can connect with you, your books, if you want to also tease out anything that's coming up, we'd love to support you. And you guys, you should definitely check out Renee's books. I'm in the process of reading her series and I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to give the floor to you again.
All right, well, absolutely. Thank you guys all for being here and for sending your questions. And it is my pleasure to have been here. I love talking about all of this stuff, the whole process and everything. So, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook are the two primary ones where you can find me posting regularly. My handle is Renee Dugan writing across all social media platforms. And then also, if you guys think of any audiobook questions you have that we didn't have a chance to get to, feel free to DM me on Instagram, and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I'll try to point you to someone who does. So yeah.
Awesome. Renee, this has been so much fun. And I just, again, really, really appreciate you. You guys definitely have all of Renee's direct links down below. So you can click over there instead of having to type it in. All that's down below. Definitely go support her and other indie authors. And let us know, yeah, if you have any additional questions, I will see if I can maybe get one or two more authors who have done audiobooks. If you guys want more of that, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, we will see you in future videos. I am thinking about doing maybe like a Camp Nano prep kind of video coming up. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And I'm just going to pop this up because I keep forgetting to mention this, that I think at the end of the month, I'm going to have a book talk about my book. I'm just going to pop it up real fast, On Wings of Ash and Dust, because the paperback has been out for a while, and I'd love to give you guys a bunch of spoilers and behind the scenes and stuff, but definitely check out Renee's books as well. I have the original cover here, which is very exciting. So yeah, go support indie authors. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.